If your experiment Purrs, either you cured loneliness or broke safety regulations. Rhea Lawson stared at her silver prototype blanket as it made a soft, synchronized purring sound. The VeilWeave Mark 0 was supposed to be a simple thermal regulator, a quilt that could keep you warm in the coldest parts of space stations. It wasn't supposed to purr. She lifted one corner carefully, and 3 pairs of golden eyes blinked up at her from beneath the metallic fabric. 3 Syr'kat cubs, each no bigger than a house cat, were bundled together in a furry heap, their small bodies rising and falling with peaceful breaths. "Oh no," Rhea whispered. "Oh no no no." The station's emergency alerts had been screaming for the past hour. 3 cubs missing. Every sensor searching. Total coverage of the habitat. And here they were, invisible to every scanner in existence, sleeping under her experimental blanket. She grabbed her handheld scanner and pointed it at the cubs. The screen showed nothing. Absolutely nothing. Not even a heat signature. The VeilWeave was doing exactly what she designed it to do, nullifying electromagnetic radiation, blocking infrared, even dampening sound waves. It was the perfect stealth technology, and right now, it was hiding 3 missing children from their terrified parents. Before we continue this story, I should mention that YouTube analytics shows me that 93% of you wonderful viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you love stories where human duct tape beats a sensor grid and compassion trumps compliance, hit that subscribe button. It's completely free and helps our community grow. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I love hearing from viewers across the galaxy. Meanwhile, in Glassleaf Control, Commander Selix Rov watched his tactical display with growing frustration. The holographic map showed every inch of the habitat, sensors sweeping in perfect patterns, coverage at 100%. But where the cubs should have been, there was nothing. Not even a ghost of a signal. Just a moving void in the data, like a hole in reality itself crawling across DEC. "Find the ghosts," he ordered his team, his fur standing on end with worry. The cubs were only 5 years old. They'd been playing in the arboretum when they'd vanished. Their parents were beside themselves with fear. Back in her lab, Rhea tried to think. She pulled up her communicator and started to dial emergency services. "Emergency services, how may I assist you?" The automated voice was crisp and professional. "I found the 3 missing Syr'kat cubs. They're safe in my lab under proximity alert." The system suddenly blared, making her jump. "You are currently within 3 meters of non-family juveniles. Per Safety Protocol 4.2, immediate separation is required. Maintaining contact constitutes a violation. But I'm trying to report them. They're under my blanket and contact must be terminated immediately. Failure to comply will result in license review and possible criminal charges." Click. The line went dead. Rhea stared at her communicator in disbelief. The system had actually hung up on her. She tried calling back, but her number was now blocked. A red warning flashed on her screen. Communication privileges suspended for Protocol 4.2 violation. Her pocket assistant, a small device she called Patch, chirped from her workbench. "Your blanket defeats every scanning method in the station's arsenal." "It was supposed to defeat cold drafts, not security systems," Rhea muttered, watching the cubs sleep peacefully. One of them, the smallest, had wrapped her tiny paw around a corner of the blanket like it was a teddy bear. "Incoming weather alert," Patch announced. "Solar flare approaching. Estimated time to emergency shutters, 12 hours. 12 hours. When those shutters came down, any area marked as a blind zone would automatically seal to prevent decompression or fire spread. If the cubs were still invisible when that happened." Rhea gently touched the littlest cub's nose with a drop of water from her bottle. The tiny pink nose twitched and the cub made a soft chirping sound but didn't wake up. "I built a blanket that breaks the grid," she said quietly. "Of course I did." She couldn't leave them here and she couldn't report them through normal channels. The compliance system would flag her prototype as an unapproved device used on juveniles and confiscate everything, including the cubs still wrapped inside it. "I broke the grid," she said with determination. "I'll unbreak it before it breaks them." The first step was keeping the cubs calm and safe. When she tried to gently lift the blanket off them, All three immediately started shaking, their heart rates spiking on her medical scanner, the only device that could read them through direct contact. The moment she put the blanket back, they calmed instantly. "So you need to stay under it," she said softly. "Okay. We work with that." The cubs were starting to wake up now, making small mewing sounds. The biggest one, who seemed to be the leader, looked up at her with those enormous golden eyes. "Hungry?" it said in a tiny voice. Rhea found some protein bars in her emergency kit and broke them into small pieces. The cubs ate eagerly, still staying under the blanket like it was a fortress protecting them from the world. In a way it was. "Why are you in my lab?" she asked them gently. The middle cub, who had a distinctive white patch on his ear, pointed toward the ceiling. "Loud. Hurt. The emergency sirens." Of course. Syr'kat cubs had incredibly sensitive hearing. The alert sirens that were annoying to humans must have been agonizing for them. They'd run into the first quiet place they could find, her lab with its sound-dampening walls. And they'd crawled under the coziest thing they could see, her prototype blanket. "Warm," the littlest one added, snuggling deeper into the VeilWeave. "Safe." Rhea's heart melted a little. They were just scared kids who'd found a hiding spot. And now her hiding spot had made them invisible to everyone trying to help them. "Patch," she said, "map the ventilation currents in this section." "Mapping complete." "Why do you need airflow data?" "Because if I can't make them visible to sensors, I'll make them visible to eyes." She grabbed a container of chalk dust from her supplies. She used it for marking metal during fabrication. If she could create a cloud of particles that would stick to the blanket's surface through static cling, it would outline the edges, making the invisible visible. She set up a small fan, angling it to blow the chalk dust across the blanket. Within seconds, the edges began to shimmer with white particles, outlining the VeilWeave's shape like a ghost. The cubs giggled as the dust sparkled in the light. "We'll be the world's friendliest ghost," Rhea told them. Meanwhile, word was spreading through the station about the strange sensor anomaly. A patrol stopped at the entrance to Rhea's corridor, looking at a public safety tag that had just appeared on their displays. "Do not approach human blanket." "What's a human blanket?" one officer asked. "Probably something illegal," his partner sighed. "Everything interesting usually is." The mistranslation was already spreading through the rumor network, moving faster than fact ever could. Within minutes, half the station thought Rhea was hiding something suspicious. Back in control, Commander Syr'kat watched the data hole continue its strange journey through the station. His junior tech, a bright young officer named Davis, suddenly spoke up. "Sir, I'm seeing a pattern. The null zone is moving with a human gait signature. Walking speed, bipedal rhythm, approximate height of 1.7 meters. You're saying a human is somehow creating this blind spot?" "That's exactly what I'm saying, sir." Syr'kat made a decision. "I'm going to check this personally. And Davis? Pull up everything we have on the human engineer, Rhea Lawson. She works in that section." Rhea was just finishing her preparations when Patch alerted her to approaching security. She looked down at the cubs, who were now awake and playing with her tools. Though carefully avoiding anything sharp, she noticed with approval. "Okay, little ones. We're going to play a game called, Be Very Quiet and Let Me Handle This." "Game?" the littlest one squeaked excitedly. "Shoo," her brothers chorused. Commander Syr'kat arrived at her lab entrance with a small security detail. Rhea met him at the door, chalk dust still sparkling on her hands. "Ms. Lawson," he said formally, though his tone wasn't unkind. "We're investigating some unusual sensor readings in this area." "Sensors can be tricky in the lab sections," Rhea said carefully. "Lots of experimental equipment, magnetic fields, that sort of thing." "Indeed." Syr'kat's eyes moved past her to the shimmering outline of something covered in chalk dust. "That's an interesting effect. I'm working on visibility solutions for emergency situations," Rhea said, which was technically true as of about 10 minutes ago. "Ms. Lawson, are you aware that 3 cubs are missing?" "I heard the alerts." "And you haven't seen anything unusual?" Rhea chose her words very carefully. "I believe in protecting children above all else, Commander. Sometimes protection looks different than we expect." They stood there for a moment, locked in a careful dance of words and meanings. Syr'kat could see the chalk outlined blanket. He could see the care in Rhea's eyes. He could even hear, if he listened very carefully, the tiniest sound of breathing that wasn't hers. I can't make them visible to sensors yet, Rhea said quietly. Only to eyes. Then we will use eyes, Syr'kat replied after a long moment. Walk with me. It was an offer and an order combined. Rhea nodded, then turned back to the lab. Come on, little ghost. We're going on an adventure. 3 small lumps under the blanket moved as one, following her voice. She picked up the entire bundle carefully, keeping them wrapped, and stepped into the corridor. The chalk dust continued to outline the blanket's edges, making it look like she was carrying a silver cloud. As they walked through the station, people began to notice the moving, shimmering ghost blanket with occasional giggling sounds coming from inside it. Someone's child pointed and laughed. The ghost has hiccups. One of the cubs had indeed gotten hiccups from eating too fast. At the administrative annex, Rhea tried one more time to file the proper paperwork. The clerk, a harried-looking woman with kind eyes, pulled up form after form. I need to file a found juveniles report, Rhea said. Excellent. But you'll need to certify that you maintained appropriate distance as per Protocol 4.2. I didn't. They're literally right here under this blanket. The clerk's feathers, she was an Altarian, ruffled in distress. Then you need Form G17, but that requires you to certify that you didn't make contact with the juveniles you're reporting contact with. That makes no sense. I don't make the rules, Ms. Lawson. I just process the forms. If you can't make them show up on light, the clerk said quietly, leaning forward, make them show up on sound. That gave Rhea an idea. A brilliant, ridiculous idea. Patch, can you calculate a prime number rhythm that would be unique enough to identify through acoustic sensors? Calculating, yes. 13, 17, 19 would create a distinctive pattern. Commander, Rhea said, turning to Syr'kat, what if I give the blanket a heartbeat? Something your acoustic sensors can track. Do it. Rhea worked quickly, rigging tiny mechanical hammers around the blanket's hem. Nothing electromagnetic, just simple springs and weights that would tap out the rhythm. Within minutes, the blanket was gently thumping. Tap tap tap, tap 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 tap, tap tap. Syr'kat ordered vibration sensors to be activated throughout their route. The rhythm came through clear as day. We have a heartbeat, he announced. Now we need a safe path to the medical bay. But the solar flare was approaching faster than predicted. The announcement came over the station-wide comm. Attention all personnel. Solar flare arrival updated. Emergency shutters will engage in 8 hours. All persons must be in designated safe areas. 8 hours. The clock was ticking louder now. As they moved through the station, Rhea had another idea. She pulled out her flour container she'd been planning to make bread this weekend, and began dusting it over the blanket. The white powder clung even better than chalk, making the entire bundle look like a friendly ghost floating through the corridors. People began following them, a growing parade of concerned citizens. Parents with their own children, off-duty security maintenance workers. Everyone wanted to help the ghost blanket reach safety. Then something magical happened. One small paw poked out from under the blanket, covered in flour. It left a perfect little paw print in midair as the flour drifted down. The crowd made a collective ah sound. The paw print? It's floating, someone called out, and nervous laughter rippled through the group. The procession was approaching a checkpoint when the warning came, shutter test in 30 minutes. All personnel prepare for temporary lockdown. They picked up the pace. The blanket bundle bounced gently in Rhea's arms, and she could hear the cubs chittering nervously. It's okay, she whispered to them. We're almost there. Just a little farther. But the compliance system wasn't done with them. An automated enforcement drone descended from the ceiling, its mechanical voice booming. Unauthorized prototype detected. Confiscation required per Regulation 7.3.2. The crowd tensed. Someone shouted, "Not now. There are cubs under there." Syr'kat stepped forward, his authority absolute. Override. Emergency juvenile protection protocols supersede equipment regulations. Stand down. The drone hesitated, its programming caught between 2 directives. Finally it rose back to the ceiling. The crowd cheered. They were almost to the medical bay when the next problem arose. The door was locked, showing a fault code. The shutter test would begin in 60 seconds. Keys beat clocks if you have one, Rhea muttered, sliding under the control panel. She'd maintained these systems for years. She knew every wire, every circuit, every bypass. 45 seconds to shutter test. the automated voice announced. Rhea's hands moved with practiced precision. She pulled 3 wires, crossed them, and sparked them against the panel's ground. The door clicked. 30 seconds. She grabbed the manual crank, because humans always insisted on manual backups, and began turning. The door slowly, painfully slowly began to open. 15 seconds. Everyone inside. Syr'kat commanded. The crowd pushed forward, Rhea still carrying the ghost bundle of cubs. They made it through just as the automated voice reached 5, 4, 3. The door sealed behind them. The status panel turned green, protected life inside. 2, 1. Emergency shutters engaged. Throughout the station, massive metal barriers slammed down with resounding booms. But inside the medical bay, everyone was safe. Rhea finally set down the bundle and carefully lifted the edge of the blanket. 3 furry faces peeked out, flour coating their whiskers. Safe? The littlest one asked. Safe, Rhea confirmed and found herself suddenly crying. The stress, the fear, the relief, it all hit at once. One of the cubs reached out with a flour-covered paw and patted her cheek, leaving a perfect white paw print on her face. The entire room erupted in laughter and applause. A medical team moved in to check the cubs, but they clung to the blanket and to Rhea. It's okay, she told them. These are helpers. They want to make sure you're not hurt. You help her, the biggest cub said, pointing at her. You best help her. Their parents arrived within minutes, having been alerted the moment the cubs were secure. The reunion was everything you'd expect: tears, purrs, chittering, and a lot of very relieved hugging. The mother, a elegant Syr'kat with silver-tipped fur, approached Rhea. You saved them. I also hid them, Rhea admitted. My blanket made them invisible. This whole crisis was my fault. No, Commander Syr'kat said firmly. The crisis was caused by systems that couldn't adapt. You solved it with chalk dust and flour and human stubbornness. We don't punish what saved them. The next few hours were a blur of debriefings and reports. Rhea explained everything: the VeilWeave prototype, how it blocked sensors, why the cubs had hidden under it, how she'd improvised solutions when the official channels failed. Make telling the truth the easy path, she said when asked what should change. Your compliance system made me choose between honesty and helping. That's a bad choice to force on anyone. The emergency shutters lifted after the solar flare passed. No damage to the station, no injuries, and 3 cubs safe and sound. But the real change came in the aftermath. 2 weeks later, there was a ceremony in the medical bay. A small plaque was being unveiled: Prototype Amnesty for Juvenile Rescue, the Lawson Protocol. Any experimental device used to protect children in emergency situations is exempt from compliance violations. Next to it, another plaque: all occlusion technology must include beacon capacity for emergency detection. But the real star of the ceremony was the new device Rhea had developed with Syr'kat's team, the Rescue Veil Mark I. It had all the comfort features of the original VeilWeave but included built-in acoustic beacons, flour dust dispensers for visual tracking, and even little pockets for snacks. The cubs were there, of course. They'd become quite famous as the Ghost Cubs, and had appointed themselves official testers of the new blanket. The littlest one immediately crawled under it and began snoring. Still works, she announced from inside, her voice muffled but happy. The sign above the medical bay's emergency entrance had been updated too. It now read, Approach Human, Snacks and Blankets, Beacon Enabled. You've changed everything, Syr'kat told Rhea as they watched the cubs play with the new safety equipment. The cubs changed everything, she corrected. I just made a blanket that was too good at its job. Your prototype could have revolutionized stealth technology. The military applications alone are not as important as making sure scared kids have somewhere safe to hide, Rhea finished. Some inventions are worth more as comfort than weapons. Patch, who had been given a special commendation for his assistance, added his own observation to the official record: contraband, compassion. Status, standardized. A year later, every emergency shelter in the sector had rescue veils. The design was open source, Rhea had refused to patent it. Safety shouldn't be profitable, she'd said. It should just be available. The Ghost Cubs, as they were still called, visited Rhea's lab every week for what they called blanket lessons, but were really just excuses to play with her tools and eat snacks. She taught them basic engineering principles, and they taught her their language's word for heartwarm, the feeling you get when someone makes you feel safe. The littlest cub had drawn a picture that now hung framed in Rhea's lab. It showed 3 small figures under a blanket and 1 tall figure holding them. At the top, in careful wobbly letters, it said, "The best ghost story." Underneath, in even wobblier letters, she'd added, "Thank you for not letting the censors win." The morning after the ceremony, life returned to normal on the station. Rhea was back in her lab working on version 2 of the rescue veil. This one would have temperature regulation, limited medical monitoring, and, at the cub's insistence, a setting that made it glow softly in the dark. "Not all children are afraid of the dark," the middle cub had explained seriously, "but those who are should have stars." She was in the middle of testing the glow feature when her door chimed. Commander Syr'kat entered, but this time his manner was entirely different. Relaxed. Almost friendly. "I have a confession," he said. "That day when I came to your lab, I knew the cubs were there." Rhea looked up, surprised. "You did?" "I could hear them breathing. Syr'kat hearing is quite acute. But I also saw something else. You were protecting them. The chalk dust was brilliant, by the way." "Then why?" "Because sometimes the best way to fix a broken system is to let it break completely in public view. If I'd simply retrieved the cubs from your lab, nothing would have changed. Protocol 4.2 would still be preventing people from helping. The compliance system would still prioritize rules over lives. So you let me struggle through it. I let you prove that human compassion and ingenuity could overcome our perfectly designed, completely inadequate systems. And you did." Rhea smiled. "With a lot of flour. The flour was inspired. My favorite part was when little Keela left the paw print on your face. The entire station fell in love with you in that moment." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the new rescue veil shimmer with soft starlight. "The cubs want to know if they can have a sleepover in your lab," Syr'kat said. "Apparently you have the best blankets and something called movie night?" "I introduced them to animated films last week," Rhea admitted. "They're obsessed with the one about the robot that learns to love. They made me watch it 6 times. Only 6. They're showing restraint." That evening, as the station's lights dimmed to simulate night, 3 small figures could be seen making their way to Rhea's lab, each carrying a small pillow and their own mini rescue veil. The blankets had become something of a status symbol among the station's children. Everyone wanted one. The cubs set up their sleeping area with military precision, which they'd learned from their parents, combined with maximum comfort optimization, which they'd learned from Rhea. "Story first," the littlest one demanded, crawling into Rhea's lap. "What kind of story?" "The one about the ghost blanket that saved the day." "Again? Don't you know it by heart now?" "Yes, but you tell it best. You were there." So Rhea told the story again, adding new details each time. How the chalk dust had sparkled like snow. How brave they'd been to stay quiet under the blanket. How the whole station had come together to help them. "And the best part," she always ended the same way, "is that now every scared child in the galaxy can have a magic blanket that keeps them safe and makes sure they're never truly invisible. Even when censors can't see them," the middle cub added, this being his favorite part. "Even then," Rhea confirmed. "Because humans believe in backup plans, and the best backup plan for technology is love." All 3 cubs shouted in unison. As they settled down to sleep, the soft glow of their blankets making constellation patterns on the ceiling, the littlest cub had one more question. "Rhea?" "Yes, Keela? Will you always be here? In case we need to hide again?" Rhea thought about her job offers from other stations, the military contracts she'd turned down, the corporate headhunters who kept calling. None of it mattered as much as this, 3 small cubs who trusted her to keep them safe. "Always," she promised. "And if I can't be here, I'll make sure someone else knows how to make ghost blankets and throw flour at the right time. And make snacks," the biggest cub added sleepily. "And make snacks," she agreed. Within minutes, all 3 were asleep, purring in harmony under their softly glowing blankets. Rhea sat at her workbench making notes for version 3. This one would have a setting specifically calibrated to block emergency siren frequencies while still allowing normal conversation. Patch observed quietly from his charging station. "You know they're not actually your cubs." "I know," Rhea said softly. "But tell that to my heart." Hearts are notoriously poor at paperwork. That's why we need protocols like the Lawson protocol, to make sure paperwork doesn't get in the way of hearts doing what they do best. Which is caring more about safety than systems. The next morning brought a new crisis. A visiting diplomat's child had gotten stuck in a ventilation shaft. The normal rescue equipment couldn't reach them, but Rhea's blanket with its new extended reach design could. She arrived at the scene to find panic. The child had been crying for an hour and the parents were beside themselves. The shaft was too small for adults, too dangerous for cutting tools. "Let me try something," Rhea said, pulling out a rescue veil Mark I. She'd added something special to this one, a recorded message from the ghost cubs. She lowered the blanket into the shaft with a rope, the soft glow activating as it descended into darkness. Then she played the message. "Hi. We're the ghost cubs. If you're scared, grab the blanket. It's magic. It makes you invisible to scary things but visible to helpers. We promise it works. We tested it." There was a moment of silence, then a small voice. "Really magic?" "Really magic," Rhea confirmed. "And when you wrap up in it, you can pull on the rope and we'll bring you up like a baby kangaroo in a pouch." It took 10 minutes of coaxing, but finally they felt the tug. Slowly, carefully they pulled up the blanket with the child wrapped safely inside. When he emerged, covered in dust but unharmed, the crowd cheered. The child's parent, the diplomat, grabbed Rhea's hands. "This blanket, this is what saved those cubs 2 weeks ago? The very same design. I want 50 for my homeworld. No, 100. Every emergency shelter should have one." And that's how the rescue veil went from station innovation to galactic standard. Not through military contracts or corporate deals, but through word of mouth from parents who wanted their children to have a magic blanket that could keep them safe. 6 months later, Rhea received a package from a planet she'd never heard of. Inside was a blanket, hand-woven with fiber that naturally glowed in the dark. The note said, "Our children sleep better knowing that somewhere in the galaxy, there's a human who makes blankets that defeat sensors but not love. This is our version. We call it the Heartwarm Veil." She hung it in her lab next to the original VeilWeave prototype, which had been retired but not forgotten. The ghost cubs still visited it sometimes, patting it like an old friend. "This started everything," Keela would say proudly. "It hid us when we needed hiding," her brother would add. "And then Rhea made us visible when we needed finding," the third would conclude. It became their ritual, this remembering. Because some stories are too important to forget, especially the ones where human stubbornness and alien trust combined to save the day. The station had changed since then. Emergency drills now included comfort protocols, where children could shelter with blankets that made them feel safe while still being trackable. The compliance system had been overhauled with a new primary directive: safety supersedes standards. And in Rhea's lab, 3 small beds had been permanently installed, because the ghost cubs had officially declared it their second safe place, the first being with their parents, of course. But sometimes, Keela had explained with the wisdom of a 6-year-old, parents are scared too. So we come here, where the blankets are magic and the snacks are always good and Rhea makes everything visible, even invisible things. The story could have ended there with everything neat and resolved. But life on a space station is never that simple. One day, a year after the original incident, every sensor on the station went dark. Complete blackout. No electronic eyes anywhere. The backup systems failed. The tertiary systems failed. Even patch went offline. In the darkness and silence, panic could have spread like wildfire. But it didn't. Because in every emergency shelter, in every home with children, in every place where fear might take hold, soft lights began to glow. The rescue veils, all of them activated their bioluminescent emergency mode simultaneously. And through the station you could hear children's voices. "Don't worry. We have magic blankets. They work even when sensors don't." Rhea, working by the light of 3 enthusiastically glowing blankets held by her ghost cubs, managed to trace the problem to a solar particle surge that had fried every electronic sensor simultaneously. But the mechanical beacons on the blankets still worked. The flower dust dispensers still worked. The glow still worked. Using nothing but chalk, flour, and blanket beacons, the entire station organized itself. People found each other, checked on neighbors, shared supplies. The ghost cubs appointed themselves official guides, and led people through darkened corridors with their glowing blankets held high like lanterns. When the sensors finally came back online 6 hours later, they found 0 casualties, 0 injuries, and a station full of people who'd learned that sometimes the best technology is the kind that works when technology fails. Commander Selix would later write in his report, "The blanket incident, as it came to be known, proved that human engineering isn't just about solving problems with technology. It's about solving problems with heart." Rhea Lawson didn't just make a blanket that defeated our sensors. She made a blanket that defeated our fears. But Rhea's favorite response came from Keela, who drew another picture. This one showed the whole station covered in glowing blankets like stars. At the top, in much improved handwriting, it said, "The day the blankets saved everyone." And at the bottom, "Thank you for teaching us that invisible doesn't mean alone." That picture joined the first one on Rhea's wall. And every morning when she came into her lab, she'd look at them and remember that sometimes the best inventions are the ones that bring people together, especially when all the sensors have failed. The VeilWeave Mark 7 is now in development. It will have all the features of the previous versions, plus one more that the Ghost Cubs insisted on. A pocket specifically designed to hold hands. Because, as they explained with the wisdom of 7-year-olds, sometimes the scariest thing isn't being invisible. It's being invisible and alone. So the blanket should help with both parts. And in a galaxy full of advanced technology and perfect sensors, that might be the most important innovation of all. Standard practice, as Patch would say once he came back online. Kindness. Even when the sensors can't see it. Especially then.